Hello friends, Tanya here with my February 2026 10 cards, all the kits, all the crates video. We're going to start out with the usual. I'm going to show you how to assemble things. This is the small die of the month called Spring Haul, and there is this adorable, oh my gosh, wheelbarrow. There we go. I I only own two of them. I should know how to call them, what to call them. All right, there's this beautiful detailed piece that you can layer over the solid backer. I love all the punch and pierce detail going on here. And then there are two circles that form the wheel. And at first I was going to layer these on top of that little dot, but realized shortly that that goes over the top of the circles to complete the wheelbarrow look, because that center wheel on your wheelbarrow has outer brackets, not an inner bracket. There are some trim pieces included. We've got this handle. Now, normally there's two handles on a wheelbarrow, but this is a side view, so we're only going to see one of them. Just cleaning up my paper hairs with my pokey tool. Next, we'll adhere the bucket part of the wheelbarrow. Just going to add a little bit of glue on that landing spot for the wheelbarrow bucket. And then there is another die cut piece that is the upper lip of that wheelbarrow. Very nice. That comes together quite quickly. There's just a few pieces. There are several pieces of foliage in this die set. We have those open, airy branches of leaves, these more thick leaves, and then the carrot topper, and a couple of stems for the cute little tulips. There is that adorable carrot. I did make a few of those because you can't just have one carrot for your wheelbarrow. There are two sizes of tulips and two different stems. Each of the dies for the tulips cuts two of each size, so you'll get 4 tulip pieces when you run your individual dies through just once. Then we have this adorable little chick. This piece goes behind the beak and the eyes, and it is shaped to fit perfectly behind your little egg-shaped chick body. There's also a egg-shaped bunny that we're going to assemble. Here are the wings for your excited little chick. This fits perfectly over the top of that. And there are embossed lines on each of the wings and the little tuft of hair for the top of the head. Then there are the little legs, and that came together so quick and easy. Then we have the bunny. There's one die that cuts 2 different pieces so you can have 2 different colors backing the bunny face. We've got the pink for the cheeks and the nose, and we have black for behind the eyes. Just going to get that tucked over the nose and the cheeks. And I wasn't perfect, so I just used my little sanding block to get the little bit of extra sanded down. Then we have the slightly smaller piece. Now these 2 pieces cut with the same die, and they are sized to fit exactly behind this cute little egg shape. Again, just using my sanding block to help with any of the extra that might be extending. Sometimes I don't get my placement perfect. Next, we're going to do the backers for the ears. These ears are adorable, and you could put them, I saw someone else just use the ears by themselves and tuck them behind a basket full of eggs, I think it was. And the wheelbarrow, if you just don't put the legs and the handle on it, that would make a nice basket. So it wouldn't have to be just a wheelbarrow. It could be a basket also. I did think about that when I was cutting all of this out. Oh, isn't that bunny cute? But I didn't actually use that idea when I created my cards. There are also 3 eggs with very detailed drop-ins. So you get the solid egg and then each of these beautiful designs. And I liked layering them up with a slightly lighter color behind them. You could cut out the top piece from some pattern paper and a backer of glitter cardstock or shimmery cardstock, or you could back it with just a solid color, or you could do solid for the detail part and some wild colors for the solid piece. Lots of great ideas. Here are all of the pieces that come in this die set. Then next we have the large die of the month, Spring Specks. This is adorable. It makes this a giant bunny with glasses, and you can have it say Happy Spring or Happy Easter. I chose to go with Happy Spring. I don't know about you. I really don't send cards for Easter, so I don't find the need for the Easter sentiment. But spring, that covers a few months, most places. So that seems a little more versatile. But if you really wanted something for Easter, say you were going to make some cute little gift boxes, ooh, you could do that with these. You could make a shallow box, square box, or maybe the little gable boxes you could slap this bunny on. Man, boy, the ideas just start flowing when you start thinking about it. This would, I think, even fit on the milk cartons. If you wanted to put a big bunny on the side of one of the milk cartons to create your own little bunny basket, that would be cute. So the glasses have a solid circle piece with drop-in spots for the sentiments, so you can back those very easily. For our bunny, there are, what did I use? Oh, I just used the fallout for the glasses to back the eyes on our bunny. So there wasn't a special die for this. You can see some little shine marks cut into those pieces. That's the fallouts from the eyeglasses. And I backed the nose area with a little bit of scrap paper because there is a separate die that cuts out the cheeks and the nose. So I'm just going to clean off the paper hairs before I tuck this in the nose area. And I put the backer there so there'd be somewhere to glue the nose. And then there are embossed marks in the face of our bunny showing us where we need to put the little pink circles for the cheeks. Now you could leave the cheeks off. I think it really adds something to this cute little bunny. Would a bunny actually have rosy cheeks? No, but this is more of a cartoon style and it really is fitting and adorable. I used a taupey brown kind of sand colored cardstock, not quite craft, it's a little lighter than that and a little more to the gray tone than a craft cardstock. We're going to add the little pink inserts for our ears. Again, just getting the paper hairs cut off. There are embossed lines or embossed marks on the ears here also. Now there's one straight up ear and one that's just flopped a little bit. And it does matter which of these you put on which ear. Just take a look at the embossed lines on your cardstock. Next, we're going to attach these to the top of the bunny head, and the flopped ear is on the bunny's left, your right. We'll just adhere those to the bunny. And oh, I'm just cleaning up some smuts off of my paper. My fingers are always gluey. I'm sure you've noticed that. So next we'll adhere the bunny head to the bunny body, and this should have been a little lower. When I assembled this bow or necktie or scarf, I realized that it should have been, it needed to be a little wider. So I should have put the head a little lower, but I think this looks cute. It just looks like a loose scarf on our cute little bunny. It does line up perfectly with the lower portion of the face. And then the bow part, you have two little ties and a little rounded rectangular piece for the knot. I like to assemble my little tie here before I glue it to the scarf, and then I can decide where I want it on our cute little bunny. Could be right in the middle, could be on either side. You can put this however you would like. I wanted it off to one side. Just adding a little dot of glue there, letting that adhere, and that's what it looks like with the bunny glasses. Now the artwork on the packaging shows this bunny with a bunch of flowers on its head. I don't know if I'll use it that way, but let's assemble those beautiful flowers. We've got this branch of 3 little buds, and the large branch part or the green part cuts out the stems, And then one die cuts these 3 little buds, and each of these little buds is the same shape, so you don't have to worry about which one goes on which bud spot. Then we have this cupped flower. I could have used 2 different color cardstocks, but I chose to stick with just one. And then there's a center portion. Now there's one die that cuts the very detailed flower center, and one that cuts, or that die cuts a detailed and a circle. So you could layer them with different colors or use them separately. I chose to use them separately. And there's our cute little cupped card on its stem. Then we have this beautiful little 5-petal flower, and I just topped that with one of the detailed centers. And then we have this rose-ish or multi-petaled type flower. So we've got 4 different flowers and 3 different shapes of leaves to add to our foliage. And that's kind of an example of how it is prepared on the packaging. Next, we have the stitching die of the month, Spring Stitched Tree. It is something you can use year-round. I cut out a whole bunch of different leaves and tree trunks and a few of the flowers. I cut out enough to do 1 flower tree. There are dies, let's see. So there's 2 different sizes of the stitching portions, and there is a die for each size, and each size cuts 3 flowers at once. So you have the detailed of each size, and then you have the solid backer for each size. And I cut them in 2 different colors. So I have 6 of the small stitched version and 6 of the large stitched version. This is the medallion style stitching. So you're going to come up from the center and go radiate out to the different holes around the flower. And I like to just hang on to the end on these smaller items and leave enough slack to tie a knot with the other end when we're done. You can use tape to secure the ends, but there's not a lot of space on the back of this flower to hide the tape. So I just tie a simple square knot on the back. I'm using the Diamond white metallic cord or thread here. Now that I've got my knot, I'm just going to carefully trim off the tails. I don't want the tails to show behind the flowers either. So I did that with the small and the large, and now I like to put a solid backer. You are going to be able to see through the holes. And sometimes I like a contrasting color to show through. Sometimes I like the same color. Next, I pulled out some rhinestones. These happen to be the citrine ones from, these were from Trinity Stamps. I don't know if they're available. I've had them for a few years, but they were this pretty lemony yellow, which I thought was a great accent to these cute little pink flowers. And since we're going to so much extra work, I thought with the stitching, I thought they needed a sparkly center. Now there is a die that cuts out 3 small and 3 large flower centers, and I added those to the solid backer type flowers. So you don't have to do stitching. You could leave the stitching off of the detailed, or you can use the solid backer too. So I'm going to take the leaves. There are enough leaves to cover all of the little pokey ends of our tree branches. And I'm just, there is no, this is the right way to assemble this. I took the larger 2 leaf and 3 leaf clusters and looked for good spots for those. You could totally switch this around. You can do this however you would like. I do love that there are enough leaves cut with just 1 pass with each of the leaf dies. There are lots of leaf dies, and I had a lot of fun. You could make this even more full if you wanted to cut more leaves and add them. I wanted to add just enough leaves to add a background to add all of these pretty flowers. So we're going to use 3 of the big and 3 of the small stitched flowers. And then I'm going to add some of the unstitched ones also. I just wanted this to be a very flowery tree. So I'm able to tack these flowers down with just a dot of glue, especially since I put those backers. Then we don't have to deal with the extra thread. When I assembled the solid backer behind each of the stitched flowers, I put my heavyweight block over the top of those to let them adhere very firmly to the threads. You're only going to put glue on the thread areas when you're putting the backers on because it's not going to touch the paper parts of the stitched petal. Next, oh, I end up sticking one more leaf in here just because I wanted it to be a little more full right there. And there wasn't a branch end there. But again, you can make this work however you would like. Boy, I was determined to use all of those flowers, wasn't I? One more spot. There we go. That is a beautiful, lush tree. Now, this reminds me of dogwood or cherry blossoms or apple trees in bloom in the spring. Any of the fruit-bearing trees are going to have luscious flowers. There are two sentiments, sunny hello and spring wishes, which I love. That neither of these are so specific to a holiday. They are just general, and you can tuck the banner in the tree, on the trunk, or below the tree. That's the completed version. So this is the crate extra die. So if you get the crates, all the crates, no, yes, something like that. All the club's crate. If you get that, you get three extras. You get this extra die set, and then there is an extra. This is the club extra, which could be a die, could be a number of other things. And you get an extra die, and you get a 10-pack of color wheel cardstock. I don't know what the colors were this time, but they're always beautiful, and they're usually colors that Josie, the designer of all of these lovely dies, uses to create her samples. So they're always very nicely coordinated. So there are 5 different flowers in this die set with 2 pieces to them. They have this beautiful detailed piece and then another backer piece that creates these, they kind of remind me of zinnias. I do love a zinnia. They are so pretty, and they're a very sturdy flower with lots and lots of petals. Um, but the petals are small, not like a rose or a ranunculus. Oh gosh, there are so many beautiful flowers. Peonies, oh, peonies are some of my favorite. Someday I'm going to have peony bushes. My mom had a deep burgundy and a white peony bushes when I was growing up. They were planted before we moved there. And whoever bought the house after my mom sold it, they turned our yard into a feed lot. It was only 4 acres, but they just fenced the whole thing in and let cattle just roam around, and it destroyed her rose beds. She had this beautiful rose bed. She had irises, and she had the peonies, and we had apple trees. Yeah, all that's gone. And then someone else bought it, and it doesn't look at all like the property that I grew up on. Still the same house. They've changed the stucco to yellow siding. Boy, we are going down my memory lane. Sorry. All because we're talking about zinnias. I've mentioned that my mom had an incredible green thumb before. And I learned a lot about horticulture from my mom, always talking about plants and what works together and what doesn't, and how to make your things grow. Next, we have the Club Extra die. This one is called Season of Faith, and it is this cute little chapel with a couple of bushes. There are several pieces here. We've got a backer to add highlight to the open windows, so you can see a light shining through, or however you want to highlight that. I chose a couple of yellow colors here. We're going to add this little steeple, and you can put a cross on top or you can leave it off. It's up to you. There is a cross included in this die set. I'll just get that roof piece in there, and then we'll add the lower building roof portion on. And does my Minnesota accent really come out when I say roof? Probably sounds normal to me, but everyone has an accent. Just depends on where you're coming from. Next, we'll add this beautiful little door, and there are again embossed details on the cardstock to show you where to put your door. Here is that the cross for the steeple. And this just reminds me of that song, Going to the Chapel. That's the song that immediately came to my mind when I saw this, Going to the Chapel and Gonna Get Married. We have these cute little bushes, and you could use multiples of these bushes and go all the way around. I did see someone else use the shorter, flatter one as a cloud. Next, we have the Better Press of the month, From Ink to Petal. Now, this month, instead of getting a roll of foil, you get a coordinating stencil. So the stencil will work on its own, but the Better Press and foil plates, the design does not look complete without the stenciling. So I'm going to foil this on a half sheet of cardstock. So that's 8.5 by 5.5 inches. This is Hammer Mill cardstock, my favorite one to do foiling on. And I use matte champagne, I think, satin champagne, maybe. It's the not as shiny metallic foil. Then we have the sentiments. There are 4 sentiments with coordinating dies, and I'm able to foil them twice on an A2 size piece of cardstock. So I have foiled all kinds of sentiments that I'll be able to use on my projects. And then we have the stencil that coordinates with this Better Press club kit. So I have my piece of cardstock and my sticky mat. Going to get that stuck down to my sticky mat. Now this was not straight at all. I did use one of my clear acrylic pieces of packaging to help mask off some areas of the cardstock so I don't get it where I don't want it. And then I have some blue paper painter's tape, and these pieces have both been used many times. I just really like to get the best use out of this. So these are the Altenew colors I'm going to use. Green Meadows and Sun-Kissed Delights. So I've got 3 different shades of green ink here. I'm going to start with Sweet Leaf, which is a light green, and this is on the I think it's a bit on the blue side of the greens, and we'll just fill in all of those tulip leaves. I think I'll only use 2 colors. I grabbed 3. I thought about shading. Did I do any shading? I can't even remember. I must not have. So I'm going to move this stencil, and the next stencil will have 2 different stencil areas on it. So stencil 1 has 1 image, and stencil 2 has 2 different areas that you're going to stencil. So I'm carefully lining this up, and since I'm not using an A2 size piece of cardstock, I have to wing it a little bit, honestly. And you'll find that my stenciling is not perfect on the foiling, but that's okay. It still looks great. Next, we're using the second darkest color of ink, and we're doing that second layer on the leaves. I'm just using, you can use whatever inks you want. You can use Distress Oxide, you can use pigment inks, you can use dye-based inks. These happen to be dye-based, and I bought all those Altenew ink pads. I'm gonna use them. But again, you can use whatever you want, whatever you have in your stash. You really do not have to own all of the different products in the world. Seriously, none of us can afford that, nor would you want to have to store all that and maintain all of those ink pads. It's a lot. I made the decision that this was something I really wanted to do and saved up for it, and that's what I did. And I hope that you are able to use whatever you have in your stash. We have some different oranges here. I've got a peachy orange as the first layer. And I decided to throw in a little bit of this coral color. This one happens to be Coral Berry. And I'm just going to do some ink blending on the tulip flowers. Most tulips, well, my favorite tulips are not a solid color. They have a gradient of color. They have some variation. I really like that. My favorite rose color is a peace rose, which is yellow and a peachy color mixed together. Um, and I have seen tulips that look like this too. Beautiful, bright, happy, and we all know I love rainbow. So not a shock that I like gradient colored flowers. We'll just add some tape again on the sides to secure that. And I just really carefully looked for how this would match up with the rest of the image when I was laying this stencil down. We'll move on to the next darkest color of orange in this grouping. I think I did use all three, but I added the gradient of that coral color at the base. Just adding some extra depth and dimension and beautiful gradient in the flowers. Now I did do 2 foilings of this background, the background tulips, and I will stencil the second ones. I believe I used some purples for that one, and I don't think I show that to you, but that's okay. We will use these orange tulips here, orange and yellow tulips here in just a little bit. We'll add our darkest orange here. I think it's called Tangerine Dream. The colors of these are so whimsical. I just love that, or the names of the colors. Adding that last little bit of coral. You could do these solid colors. You could use even the same color for each layer, varying the amount of ink blending you do. So if you have just a few ink pads, you can still add depth and dimension just by the number of layers or the amount of pressure you put on the ink blending. The best way to get your paper off of your sticky mats is to roll the mat away from the paper. And there is our beautiful tulips. Next, we have the stencil of the month called Botanical Bunny. This is adorable. I have another half sheet of cardstock. We're going rainbow today. We've got Sea Breeze and Sun Ray and Pinkalicious, Firefly, and Grass Field. I did have Shadow Creek out also. I don't know that I actually, oh yeah, I did use it because there's 3 layers of greenery and 2 layers of blossoms. So you can see there are marks on the stencils that guide you for placement if you're using an A2 sized card to stencil on. I have an 8.5 by 5.5 inch piece of cardstock here, so that's 2 A2 size card sizes. And so I'm using the 2 corners to get my placement. And that really helps. Although I will show you later on that you can do the stenciling and line things up without using the registration marks in the corners of the stencils. I'm using the lightest ink of green here. This is the Firefly, I think it's called. Just going to fill all of that in. I could have used a bigger blending brush. That would have gone faster. I didn't think of that at the time. So we'll go with our second stencil and our medium tone of green ink and add that. And it works pretty well if you're using the same blending brush to go from lightest to darkest. If you are using the same blending brush for all 3 colors of green and you're not doing lightest to darkest, you can clean your brush off a little bit by just rubbing it on a piece of paper towel, another piece of cardstock, or like a cleaning cloth like my microfiber cloth. Now our third layer of greenery, we're going to use the third color, which happens to be the darkest. Now the second time I do my stenciling for this bunny, I do the greens in the opposite order. And the largest leaves are the darkest. And that looks adorable also. Next, we're going to do our first layer of flowers, and we're going to use those 3 colors to create our rainbow. I am doing the yellow in the middle, and there's going to be some overlap with the pink and the blue to create orange and green. We're going to add our Pinkalicious because that was Sunray in the middle. This is Pinkalicious. We're going to overlap a little bit to get a lovely orange. If you want, you could use an orange and a green, or a teal and a more traditional blue. We'll get a little bit of the green. I'm trying to avoid getting as much green as I can because the leaves there represent green. We'll add our second layer of flowers, and I have 3 more colors of ink here. We've got rubellite, chamomile, and turquoise. These are the next darkest in each of those families. And I'm going to add the yellow again in the middle first. And it is a little darker than the sun ray. And then I will move on to the pink, I believe. And we'll get a nice deep orange where this overlaps. And then we'll do the blue or the turquoise and add that as a nice pop for our second layer here. Then I'll just peel that off. Oh, let's cover up our ink pads because, yeah, one of the nice things about the sticky mat is it holds the ink pads in place for ink blending and for putting the lids back on. Next, we have the clear Stampin' Die of the month. This one's called Ears to Spring, which is really cute. There's a border image and several sentiments, 2 butterflies and 2 flower bunches. So I'm going to stamp my sentiments. I'm going to make a couple sheets like this because I like to have a bunch of sentiments ready to go when I start creating. And this is my favorite way to do this. So this is 100-pound heavyweight white cardstock. I used VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, which is a pigment ink. And I'm going to heat emboss this with some clear embossing powder. Now, I do have a dog, and sometimes when I'm cleaning the stamps, I transfer a little bit of hair onto my stamps. That is always disappointing, and there are a couple of instances of that on this piece of cardstock. And yeah, sometimes you can get away with using these pieces anyway because the coordinating dies cut away your little extra bits. Sometimes you can't. Now for my images that you can color in, I'm going to start with Memento ink. No, this is Hero Arts Intensified Black. It is a Copic marker or an alcohol marker friendly ink. And we are going to color these in. I'm going to use some of the warm browns here or warm grays for the bunny. I'm using a darker warm gray. This is W3 to add the shadow areas, and then I'll come back and blend in the W1. Now this will dry back a little bit, so this is the darker than it will look when it is finished. I did fill in the pink area of the ear with the warm tone because it will add a warmth to that pink. Next, we're going to color the egg in the grass here, and I decided to keep my color palette fairly simple. We have pinks, greens, yellows, and blues in this particular. Do I have blues? Yeah, I do. Some blues. Again, kind of rainbow toned, isn't it? We'll add some yellow spots to our pink Easter egg. Then I'm going to add a second color of yellow to add some shading. I'm going to do my lighter yellow on the flower petals on all of these flowers. I could have chosen to color all of these flowers different colors, but I was trying to keep it a little more simple. Just adding that lighter yellow to all the flowers, and then we'll use a darker color on the center of the flowers. I don't need it to be super defined because it's a very abstract design. Next, we're going to add 3 different colors of green marker here for the grass. And I'm going to try to color a little lower because I don't know how long or how deep I need that coloring to go because this is a border die. It doesn't cut all the way around, it just does the top edge. So you can make this as long as you would like. I've got my first layer of green down. Then we'll take our second color of green and add some flicking motions, just really creating that feel of grass and individual grass blades. Then we'll take our darkest green and flick in a few more of the grass blades into our background. I do add a little bit of highlight on some of those stems. And I think I did go back and color the leaves on the flower bunches. For the butterflies, I'm going to color them both the same with these blue greens, kind of a really light aqua color. And then just some flicks of color to add some extra gradation on those butterflies. Now that I have all of the coloring done, I'm going to come back Put them back in the Misty. I'm going to use a piece of acetate to make sure I have my placement correct, because I'd hate to do all that ink, all that coloring, and then find myself with my images not lined up appropriately. Looks like that is perfect. I will add some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink to my inks, or to my stamps, and we will stamp these images again. And then I'm going to come back with the clear embossing powder, and we'll sprinkle that over the freshly inked images. That just sharpens all of those lines up and adds a little extra specialness with that shiny raised line around each of these images. Just gonna heat all of those and watch the magic happen. I don't know about you, but heat embossing will forever be one of the most magical things about paper crafting. Creates such a beautiful image. And there they are, all die cut. You can see that border edge and all of our sentiments. We've got celebrate in full bloom, hello spring, your friendship makes spring brighter, fresh picked wishes for you, bloom with happiness this spring, sending springtime smiles, lots more I didn't read. For card number 1, we're going to start with my favorite 5x7 matting basics set B, the largest die, and we're going to use the Shady Leaves 3D embossing folder of the month. It is gorgeous. I will be using this embossing folder over and over again. It's going to be one of my favorites. I love it. I did decide to try to add a little extra pizzazz to this background. I used some craft colored cardstock. I'm using shattered shell. You could use antique linen. I think that's a similar color, but it actually faded back so you can't even see it now on the finished card. So we're going to take the springtime stitched tree, and then we're going to use the perfect touch arches and the essential arches. I found 2 of those arches that coordinate with each other to create some layers behind our tree. It needed a little extra definition over that embossed background. So I've got this olivey green that's the same color as one of the groups of leaves, and white to back this. When I assemble or kind of dry fit this, it was not, that was too much of the olivey green. So I'm going to ink blend this with the grass field ink. You could use mowed lawn. That would be a distress ink equivalent. Lots of great colors. I think Concord and Ninth, this would be like parsley, I think. Lots of different brands have beautiful greens that are similar to this. Is this Later Gator in the Simon Hurley inks maybe? So many beautiful ink colors by so many different companies, and they're all fabulous. You use whatever works best for you. The reason I decided to go ahead and get all of the Altenew colors, which they keep adding to their collection, it's over 200 colors. It's a lot. It is a lot. If you are a full set syndrome kind of person like I am, that's going to set you back some money. But I enjoy having the different families of gradient colors. That was what made me decide to go ahead and do this. I do a lot of ink blending, and sometimes you just really need a lot of different colors, or want a lot of different colors. Again, you can really stretch your ink pads by the number of layers that you ink blend with, and with the pressure that you use when you're ink blending. I've added extra cardstock behind our embossed panel here. Going to add some glue, and we're going to put this on a white cardstock base. I thought about putting it on a craft cardstock base, but then I thought the white behind the tree on that arch die cut wouldn't tie in as well with the rest of the card. I, of course, added extra cardstock layers between each of these items also, because I do like a little dimension. And I added just a few strategic spots of extra cardstock behind our tree. This will be just a little bit bigger than our arches, and that's okay. That's what I intended. I wanted this to kind of be expanding beyond the borders of the arches, and we'll add the sunny hello to the bottom of the tree. I added extra cardstock on the ends of the banner so it would lay nicely on our card base. Next, we're going to take a sentiment from the Clear Stampin' Die of the Month, the Ears to Spring set. And it says, sending springtime smiles. We'll adhere that to the top third of the card. And then I was originally going to put a stitched flower on the inside. That is way too much bulk. I'm just going to take one of these 2-leaf clusters and one of the not stitched flowers. We'll adhere that just to the left of the sentiment. And that's where I changed my mind. There we go. We're going to put one of the flat flowers on the inside. I do like to add some extra die cut pieces to the inside, but there are limits to the amount of things that you can glue on the inside. And that's card number 1. For card number 2, we're going to bring in the Better Press and Stencil of the Month from Ink to Petal. And there is our beautifully foiled and stenciled piece. This is pretty wonky, you can tell here. I'm just using the bottom of the tulips to get my nice straight edge. We're going to do a mini slim line here, so I'm going to cut this down to 3 by 6 inches. Just going to go all the way around, cutting this to 3 by 6. Using my Spellbinders guillotine trimmer. This is just the small one. I have a big one, a 12 by 12 also, that I've had for decades now. I love a guillotine trimmer because you never have to replace the blades and they self-sharpen and you can just keep using them over and over again. So that is a great investment if you are going to be using lots of paper trimming. Next, we're going to take some sentiments from the You Are Everything Sentiments Better Press and Die set. This is one of those Better Press sets that does several sentiments in one pass, and the die cuts all of them at once also. Love that. This is my handy dandy quick and easy sentiment organizer. I had made a bunch of sentiments previously with this, and so I was able just to pull them out of that little organizer and add them to the front of my card. They happened to be better pressed in a color that matches my tulips, so that's what we're going to use. I always need little thank you cards when we're traveling because I like to give them to the flight attendants and the pilots and the gate attendants when we're on the plane. I like to give them to hotel people. I just like to scatter a little bit of joy everywhere I go because I'm on vacation, but it's their day to day, and everyone likes a little thank you. We're going to pull in the Spellbinders Peach Opalescent Sequins. I still am working on my very first pack of the sequins here, and I use them as little gems on my projects. There are 3 different sizes in these sequins. I like that they don't have a hole in the center. And they are these beautiful iridescent sequins. They last forever. Love that. Then I will add the sub sentiment on the inside, although this could be a front of the card sentiment too. This says, thanks for just being you. And I'll add some sequins on the inside of this card also because there's never enough shine in this world. So we've got thanks for just being you. And the front says a little something to make you smile. Next, we're going to use our Botanical Bunny Stencil of the Month. This is the panel that I first ink blended. We're going to use the Precision Layering A2 size, set A. We're going to use the third from largest die. And then I pulled out my stitched scallop card front and tag stitching die of the month from February of last year. I had gone a little crazy with my stitching last year, so I have several of these all stitched up and ready to go on a project. And this one matched the colors on my stenciling perfectly. So there we go. Decision made. It's nice to have some of these things pre-made in your stash to add to projects, especially if you're a little short on time, but you want it to have all of that extra special detail. Next, we're going to use the Ears to Spring stamp and die set. We're going to take the Ears to a Wonderful Easter die and stamp. I'm going to layer this up with a couple extra blanks behind our sentiment. I do love the coordinating dies for our sentiments. That makes it so easy to add your sentiment wherever you want, and it can overlay the image and still be easily read. I'll add that kind of tucked between the blossoms on the left ear, or the ear on the left side of the card front. And then on the I have a few of these Spectrum AB Color Essential gems left. I'm going to use every one of these little tiny gems on the front of this card. Just going to scatter them around the left side of the card. Sometimes when you have just a few left, you want to finish off that package because won't be enough to do the next project. And since these are all the same size, this is probably the best use of those tiny little gems. It's taken me a long time to use those up. There's a lot of gems on there. Now here I'm going to show you that you can do this without using the registration marks. I'm just going to wing it. I took my open card base and I angled the stencil on here. So I'm going to start with my medium green instead of the lightest green and add that to our stencil. And once I have that layer stenciled, I'm going to peel this off and move on to the next color. Oh no, I guess that wasn't. Was that the darkest? No, it was the lightest. I think it was one of the greens. We'll find out. So this is layer 2. And I'm trying to figure out where that lines up. So I'm going to lay it over the top of the previous stencil, see where my top portions connect to the leaves, and I can see that they just kind of nestle like they're the branches of those leaves. And once I have that all lined up, which was actually much easier to line up than I thought it was going to be, we'll add our next color of green ink. Once that layer is done, we'll peel this off. Oh, I decided to clean that a little bit. Probably not a bad idea, to be honest. And then we will use the next stencil to add the third layer of green. But again, I'm going to lay it over the top of the previous 2 stencils to see where these all line up. And then I can transfer that onto the image. And first I'm trying to line up the top portions, then I'm fine-tuning my placement by looking at the bottom portions of the stenciled image. I'm going to use the darkest of the green inks here, the Shadow Creek. So we've got Firefly, Green Field, and Shadow Creek for those colors. And then I am going to peel that and we'll put our 2. It's amazing to me that the greens, the foliage take more stencils than the blossoms. Again, going to use the layers to figure out the previous stencils, to figure out placement. And a lot of the blossoms meet up with the ends of the little branches in the already stenciled portions. Again, starting at the top and then fine-tuning with the blossoms on the bottom of the stencil. We will again start with the pink, yellow, and blue, the lighter. And I'm going to do the middle section first with the yellow. I really like to do the yellow first. It is the most easily contaminated ink. So in my mind, it's best to start with that one so it isn't actually going to pick up any other colors and cause contamination on your ink pad. We'll do the blue and the pink, getting our overlap with the orange and trying not to get too much overlap with the yellow and blue because I don't really want another shade of green. And that is the entire bunny. Once we have, oh no, we're not done with the bunny. I forgot. That was only layer 1 of the flower portions of the blossoms. This one's a lot easier to line up. I didn't have to reference the other 2 layers. Just going to add my darker yellow first. Again, don't want to contaminate my yellow ink pad, so we're starting with the yellow. And then we'll go in with the pink and the blue. Now you can put the yellow streak or that section at the top or the bottom and have your gradient go in either direction. I just tend to stick with the yellow in the middle, and maybe next time I do a rainbow I will change that up a little bit. Now that I have that complete, I'm going to close my card and roll the sticky mat away from our card, and that completes card number 3. On to card number 4, we're going to use the clear Stampin' Die of the month again, the Ears to Spring. And here is our colored and die cut piece. We're going to pull out the Ribbon and Trim die. This came out last month with the classic Pooh stuff. And I have this rickrack style die and a piece of pink cardstock. I die cut that, laid this next to our cute little bunny, and that pink just didn't quite feel right. So I'm going to pull out that Pinkalicious ink pad and a bigger ink blending brush, which I should have been using earlier. Oh well. And we'll ink blend all across this rickrack piece to add a color that I like a little better. Now, I didn't intend to use the same ink colors all along in my creations, but I kind of end up doing a lot of the same colors. It's kind of nice to not have to keep going back and figuring out another color. We're going to do a 4-bar card here, and I've got Sea Breeze, Sunray, and Pinkalicious. We're going to create a nice sunny day ink blending. So I'm figuring out where I want our cute little bunny placed. I want a little bit of a border along the bottom. So I'm going to take a piece of blue masking tape here, painter's tape, and I'm going to use my grid marks to mark off the bottom 1/2 inch of this piece of cardstock. Since this is going to be a 4-bar card, this is 4 5/8 by 3 1/4 inches, because a 4-bar card is 4 7/8 by 3 1/2 inches. That gives us a 1/4 inch border around our panel here. So I'm doing a nice little blend of yellow at the base, and then we're going to come back in with blue for the top of the sky. And I'm trying not to overlap these too much because, again, I don't want to create a green between the two of them. There is a little bit of overlap. It's very subtle, but I try not to work that in too much. Now that we have our ink blending done, I am going to dry fit this again and make sure that it is looking the way I intended it. I actually quite like that. The die cut border is only 4 1/4 inches long, so we had to stretch that a little bit. We're going to use the Yasatomo, I think it is, Spellbinders and Yasatomo watercolor mixing set here. So I've got the pearl version here, and I just added some water to that, got a nice slurry of paint mixed up, and then I splattered it. I did come back with some clean, clear water and spattered that too. And now we're using my heat tool. This heat tool, I've moved up in the world. Since my old heat tool died, this one has 2 settings. It has the drying setting and the heat embossing setting. I'm just using the drying setting on my heat tool here to just help dry that out quicker. And when you're using the drying setting, you don't tend to warp your cardstock as much. I'm going to glue my cute little bunny border here directly to the cardstock. I did resist the urge to add an extra cardstock layer behind that. We will use our rickrack cardstock piece here to camouflage the edge there of the cardstock and to give our cute little bunny a landing spot on the card front. Next, we will add extra layers of cardstock behind this panel and adhere that to a 4-bar heavyweight white cardstock base. I'm just going to center that on our card base like so. And I think the spatter really added a lot to this card. Next, we're going to take a sentiment from the card. I've added just a little strip of cardstock behind that. You could just cut another of the sentiment backers. I chose to just use a little scrap of cardstock, and this says, "Fresh picked wishes for you." I have a cute little butterfly that I added a little extra cardstock behind. We'll add that like it looks like the bunny is looking up at the butterfly. We have a cluster of 3 flowers from that stamp set. And we have the profile view of the butterfly. We'll add that so it's like it's landing on the flowers. And that completes, is this card number 4? On to card number 5. Going to pull in the Distress Oxides. This is Shaded Lilac and Salvage Patina. And when I am covering a large area, I really like to use the Distress Oxides. They cover a large area much more easily. I'm noticing that my Salvage Patina is a little dry. It is winter here. The humidity here is very low right now. I did end up doing a little bit of ink refresher on these ink pads. I paused the video right there and added some ink refresher to both of these ink pads, and it's much smoother glide. Now I don't need this entire panel ink blended, so I am doing, I think, up to 8 inches of this. Maybe it was only 7.5 inches. Anyway, of this 8.5 by 5.5 inch piece of cardstock, because we're going to cut this down to put on a 5 by 7 card base. I love the way Shaded Lilac and Salvage Patina blend together in the center. I think that is a wonderful blend. And we're going to use the 5 by 7 Matting Basic Set B largest die and the embossing folder of the month, Spring Stripes. So I cut the panel down with the Matting Basics die first, and then I run it through the embossing folder. And now we're going to use the Pearl Luster Gilding Polish. Now you could use so many of the other pastes out there. The Simon Hurley Lunar Pastes and Solar Pastes would work well with this. I just love my applicator and the simple pearlescent shine of the Pearl Luster Gilding Polish. Just going to add that to really make the vines on this embossed panel really show up boldly. Next, we're going to pull in the die of the month, Spring Haul, and we're going to pull in that really cute wheelbarrow, the adorable little elements that go in the basket. Next, we're going to use the Essential Stylish ovals, and we're going to die cut another Spring Stripes. We're going to die cut that oval, and we're going to emboss it with the Spring Stripes, and then we're going to, nope, I decided not to do the Pearl Luster. We're going to put that on our, oh yeah, I found these grass dies in my stash. These are some old ones from Hero Arts. These, I'm going to create a little, what are these? These are Thorn Tree and Grasses fancy die. These are from a long time ago. You can still get them. I think they're on the clearance rack, both on Hero Arts and Spellbinders. If you weren't aware, Spellbinders purchased Hero Arts. It is still its own, Hero Arts is still its own company. Spellbinders, it's just under the Spellbinders umbrella now. Now I'm taking 3 layers of this grass, and I'm going to adhere those at the bottom of this oval after I run them through the die cut machine with the same oval die. Just going to make sure I grab the right one, and then I'll run that through the die cut machine, and there we have some lovely grass to go on the bottom. I'll just adhere this to the bottom of the oval, and that creates the perfect landing spot for our little wheelbarrow full of flowers and carrots and greenery and that adorable little egg-shaped bunny. So cute. Just going to add some glue all the way around there. I do add an extra piece of cardstock at the base of our wheelbarrow to make sure that all of that extra foliage and stuff in there will rest evenly on the front of our card. And this is my favorite tip that I've picked up from, well, one of my favorite tips from Jennifer McGuire, using press and seal to hold all of those elements together once you've gotten them placed the way you want them. Next, we'll take the embossed panel, ink blended, embossed, and gilded panel, and we'll adhere that to the front of the card. I did, of course, put some scrap cardstock behind the back of that panel. Same with the oval. Just add glue to those extra pieces, and we'll center those on the front of the card. This is a 5 by 7 card. We do know I love making 5 by 7 cards. And then we will do a sentiment for the front of the card. This says, "Celebrate in full bloom." I'm stamping it with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink on some scraps of heavyweight white cardstock. This is a 100-pound white cardstock, and I'm using my clear embossing powder. I keep it in this sandwich container. I've had it in the same container for a long time, and it's actually a blend of several different brands of fine clear embossing powder. I just dumped them all in the container. I think there was even some scented embossing powder in there. It doesn't have any scent anymore. That's okay. I didn't need scented. Next, we'll use the coordinating die to cut out our sentiment. And I do cut out at least one extra layer. Maybe it is only one extra layer. I'll adhere those together. I'm using my Barely Arts Precision Glue in the fine tip bottle or fine line bottle from Spellbinders. I love that little bottle. I sometimes get tendonitis, especially in my right arm, and I don't know, I was pulling my winter boots on earlier this week, and it hurt. And I keep re-injuring it because it's my right arm and I am right-handed. Yeah. So it's been interesting. Yeah. I briefly had to use my full-size bottle of Barely Art Precision Glue, and yeah, my arm was really not liking the squeezing, but this fine line bottle is much easier on my poor injured arm. Now we have this beautiful cluster of greenery and tulips, and we'll add that to the inside of the card because the inside deserves to be beautiful too. We'll add a little bit of glue on that tulip that I didn't actually hit with glue the first time. As you saw, I used my fine tip or my reverse tweezers to help hold all of those together once I figured out how I wanted them to lay. And then we'll add our sub-sentiment on the inside of the card. And this says, "Bloom with happiness this spring." I thought that was a great addition to this card. And that completes card number 5. We're on to card number 6. We're going to use these gorgeous Shady Leaves 3D embossing folder again. I have a 3x6-inch piece of heavyweight white cardstock. I've added some extra cardstock behind that to add a little extra depth and dimension, and we'll adhere that to our 3 1/4 by 6 1/4 inch cardstock base. This is white on white. I do love white on white when it comes to embossed matted panel. I think it's such a classy look. Next, we're going to use the large die of the month Spring Specks, and we're using just the flowers and the glasses. I just thought it was really cute to have these floral glasses saying Happy Spring. And I am using the press and seal trick again. I added a little bit of extra cardstock on the larger blooms that are in the center of each of these circles for the eyeglasses. Just going to add a little bit of glue to all of these individual pieces. I did add some glue between the glasses and the stems so they adhere together. And I'll get that centered on the front of this card, and it just says Happy Spring. Now the hardest part is peeling this press and seal back without pulling things off of the card base, and now the really delicate pieces sometimes get caught in the press and seal and can tear your paper. So be aware of that if you're using the press and seal trick. I'm just carefully peeling this back, replacing anything that gets pulled up, and making sure everything sticks perfectly. And that completes the front of the card. Now let's do something on the inside of the card. We're going to take that clear Stampin' Die of the Month, Ears to Spring. Boy, this thing is really working hard this month. We're going to add a sentiment to the inside along with some flowers, with a flower. Just going to adhere that on the inside of the card. This says, "Your friendship makes spring brighter," which is a great general card. You could use this for birthdays, thank yous, all kinds of things. Just going to pop that flower right snuggled in with the sentiment, and that completes card number 6. On to card number 7. We're going to start with my favorite 5x7 Matting Basics Set B largest die. And then this comes out today. This is the Ornate Eggs embossing folder. There is a coordinating stencil with this. It is a Simon Hurley product. Absolutely stunning. We've got the layered Ornate Eggs stencils. There are 5 stencils here, 4 of which are just eggs, just the ovals for the eggs. Now the details on that 5th stencil do not match the embossed details. So if you're thinking it's going to match the details on the embossed eggs, it won't. This way you can have detailed eggs that aren't embossed. So the stencils work without the embossing folder, and the embossing folder works without the stencils, but they work very well together. Now each layer of these egg dies, you can do a whole different color. So I'm doing this entire stencil with the yellow yellow ink. And I've got 2 yellows here. I've got the Sunray and the Chamomile. Again, I didn't intend to use the same colors the whole time, but they were out on my desk. And they worked well for the very beautiful bright spring colors. Just going to use the Chamomile to add a little bit of contrast here, and you can really see the difference in the colors now as you layer them on top of each other at the same time. Now keep in mind, these are dye inks and they will dry back a little bit, so they won't be quite as bright as you see them now after they're finished drying back. Now that I have this layer finished, we'll peel that off. Oh, nope, I'm going to wipe it down first. That is not a bad idea because you can accidentally transfer ink where you don't want to transfer it if you leave the ink on the stencil. Now the nice part about this method, if you're doing the stenciling and then the layering over the top, is your embossing will create places for that the stencil to just nestle right down on top of. The next color we're going to use is pink. So I've got Pinkalicious and Rubellite here again. And I'm found some bigger blending brushes to do my ink blending here. It makes it go a lot faster if your blending brush is bigger when you're doing a large area. Just going to really cover the entire thing and try and get as much of the ink on the eggs. Next, we're going to use the Rubellite because that was Pinkalicious first. That's the lighter color. And again, just highlighting or adding a little shading on our eggs. Are you enjoying these colors? I really am. I reach for Pinkalicious a lot. Rubellite's a really bold, hot pink, but it goes very nicely in your ink blending. So we'll add the lids back on those. We'll peel off the second stencil and we'll go with the third stencil. Just going to line that up with the embossed eggs. And if it's not exact, it's not the end of the world. I think when I do finally finish this entire thing, there are some that aren't completely lined up perfectly, but that's okay. It'll still look fantastic. This is going to be a very busy background. Now we've got green. I think this is probably Firefly and Grass Fields. And this ink blending brush is a different brand, and I don't like it as much. It doesn't pick up and transfer the ink quite as well until I go back and add a little bit of water to my microfiber cloth and run the blending brush over it to just kind of moisten the bristles. I don't know what was up with that, but I'm having to work a little harder to get that ink blending done. So I'm going to use the darker of the greens. Again, I think this is Firefly and Grass Fields. So this is probably Grass Fields. Just adding that shading. That's a pretty big jump between colors, but it's still pretty. Again, they will dry back. I come back with the lighter green and ink blend over the top because that was such a drastic color change, just to blend that a little better. Now, a tip for putting these back together with the cap is to kind of spin so you don't get any of the bristles caught in the cap. We'll clean that and move on to our next. Yep, that was Grassfield and Firefly. We'll get our last color or our last stencil lined up, and we're going to use the aquas or turquoise blue So sea breeze and turquoise are the colors this time. Going to ink blend my blues. Now, this would look really pretty on a light colored cardstock or even craft colored cardstock. I chose not to go with craft because we're going to use something that is already a neutral tone that would probably get lost in the background. If I used a craft background, this again is a really busy color scheme. We'll add our little shadows on our eggs here. And don't worry, we're going to do something to really bring out the details on each of these eggs after we're done with all of this stenciling. You can see the detailed stencil next to me to the left of my hand there. And yeah, I I was hoping it would match with the details on the stenciling, but that's okay. It doesn't have to. You can use this last stencil if you aren't using the embossing to use some pastes and things to create some really beautiful eggs. So there we have the entire embossed and ink blended background. We're going to use the Pearl Luster Gilding Polish to really highlight all of the details. Now this is probably faster than doing stenciling with a paste because you'd have to wait for that paste to dry, and the gilding polish dries almost instantly. So this is going to add a little bit of, it's really going to bring out those embossed details on each of those eggs without a lot of work. Love that. Almost done there. And I'll give you a quick close-up look at all of that embossing and gilding. I love how that turned out. So I added some extra cardstock behind that panel, and we're going to adhere that to a 5x7 heavyweight white cardstock base. And there was one little smudge of ink. That's why I flipped that. I wanted that to be hidden behind the next element that we're going to put down. We're going to use the Spring Specks large die of the month, that beautiful bunny that we created earlier. Added some extra cardstock behind our bunny body and ears, head, all of the things. And we'll adhere that to the front of the card, lining up the bottom edge of the bunny with the bottom edge of that mat. I love those Easter eggs behind our cute little bunny. And we'll adhere the glasses to our bunny to create our sentiment also. I'm trying to use his little eyes to guide my placement of the glasses to make sure that they're nice and even. Now for the inside of the card, I decided to go ahead and stencil with the same stencils. I've got my sticky mat here, and to help with placement, since I don't have the embossing to guide me, I'm using my painter's tape that has had many uses. I tore it in half so I could create a corner for those stencils to fit into. I'm using my acetate sheet here to protect the other side of the cardstock so I don't get ink where I don't want it. I'm just using whatever ink is left on the ink blending brush because I want this to be more subtle. I want you to be able to write over this to do your sentiment. Again, cleaning my stencil before I remove it. And we'll move on to the second color. Just lining that up in the corner there. And the sticky mat holds the stencil in place. Then we'll use the pink. Again, whatever ink is left on the ink blending brush. That pink is a really strong color, so that was not hard. Again, twisting as I'm putting the cap on to make sure I don't get any bristles caught. Now, my microfiber cloth was a little damp when I was cleaning the pink layer off. At least the area of my microfiber cloth was. So I got a little bit of muddiness in a couple of the eggs, but we'll live with that. So here's where I'm going to take the green brush and add a little bit of water to that microfiber cloth and just get the ends of that brush damp, and that will release more of that green color. We'll clean off that next stencil, and we'll come back in with the blue stencil. Again, lining it up in the corner. We're not doing any shading with this one. We're just going to lay a light layer of color through each stencil. Again, using my damp area on the microfiber cloth. I guess I didn't really find a great damp spot. But again, we just want a really light stenciling. We'll peel that last one off. Oh, I'm finding a dry spot so I don't accidentally get muddy blue in there too. And peel all the things off, including the tape, which I'm always surprised that it sticks well to our sticky mat. But I'll take it. Roll that away from the card base so I don't curl the paper. And then we're going to use Ears to Spring Clear Stamp and Die of the Month again. I have my anti-static powder bag there, my big mop brush that I helps get rid of some of that extra powder. And we're going to stamp Sending Springtime Smiles. I tried to stamp this a couple times. I actually ended up going back and stamping this on a different piece of cardstock because I had a loose hair on there. And I finally get one that's stamped perfectly. Sometimes you got to stamp a few times, especially if you keep adding hair to your stamps. Then I'll use the coordinating die, and we're going to cut 2 or 3 extra blanks to get the sentiment that we need. I actually got 2 of these to work out well. I embossed one of them and left the other one unembossed, and I'll cut both of them out, and I'll use one of those later. So we'll die cut our sentiment. I'm using my Scout here, and hey, it just came in the mail. I didn't use it in this video, but I got one of the magnetic mats, magic mats. So we'll see how that works. We'll add our sentiment to the inside of the card. Just adding a little bit of glue to the back of this stencil, or sorry, stamped and heat embossed. If I was just going to stamp this without heat embossing it, I might pull out my Altenew stamp wheel, the big one that has the side that removes, and stamp it directly inside the card. So that was card number 7. Card number 8, we're going to pull out that Shady Leaves 3D embossing folder, and we're going to emboss this panel of very light green from my stash, and we're going to use the Essential Stylish Ovals and die cut a piece of vellum to put our cute little chapel from Season of Faith. We're going to adhere that to the vellum piece, and this is going to be another 4-bar card. We're going to use a sentiment from Ears to Spring. This one says Easter Blessings. I did make 2 Easter cards this time. I'm a little surprised, but I thought that was perfect with this cute little chapel. So we will adhere the embossed panel to my white 4-bar card base, which is 4 7/8 by 3.5 inches. And then we will adhere the chapel to the vellum oval. I did add extra cardstock on the back of our little chapel. It helps to give that impression of the chapel kind of floating above the vellum. Now that I have that adhered, we will add some cardstock shims to the back of this to add the illusion of the vellum floating off of the leaves. It also helps adhere this a little better. It's a pretty bumpy surface, and it's better to do cardstock to cardstock than it is to do vellum to cardstock, especially when it's bumpy. Whoops, dropped my piece. We'll add that to the front of the card, and we'll add our Easter blessings underneath the chapel on the cardstock matted base. And then we're going to add some peridot gems, Color Essential gems. I did finally put mine on a book ring. This is one of the book rings from Spellbinders. You get 12 beautiful, very well constructed book rings. I've bought some cheap book rings in the past, and they're difficult to open. They, yeah, I just don't like them as much. These Spellbinders ones are gorgeous. Of course, Spellbinders always has your back. They get the good stuff. So I have a scattering of those beautiful peridot gems, and on the inside of the card, I'm just going to add these 2 little bushes. They really create a nice little detail. These are cut from cardstock that looks like it is the rainforest cardstock. It could be another color from my stash, but it's the mid-tone green. There we go. That finishes card number 8. That was a quick one. Next, we're going to do card number 9, and we're going to use the Season of Faith die again. Only this time, I'm going to show you how to turn these into little houses instead of chapels. We're going to start out by attaching the long section of roof. Just going to adhere that, and then I'm going to just take my scissor and trim off the steeple. That easy. Goes from a little church with a steeple to a house. So now we'll take our backer, and I'm going to glue that to our backer so we still have the little contrasting colors behind our windows, and it makes it extra sturdy, makes it more like a chipboard piece when we have all of those layers. And I'll go ahead and trim that off, and I'll just take a little V-cut section here where those two sections of roof meet. And there we go. It's a little house instead of a chapel. We'll take the door here and add that. Now this was inspired by images from Greenland with all of their beautiful painted homes. They live in it. I know it's called Greenland, but it's very snowy and icy. It's cold most of the time there, and their homes really add the pops of color. They stand out beautifully against the white and gray background. So I'm just going to have this cluster of beautiful, vibrant colored homes, and we're going to just trim off that steeple, and we'll do another purple, the purple backer on this one. I did try adding a yellow backer behind all of these, but I did not like how it looked. We'll add a little bit of glue on the back of this one, and you can see that I didn't even bother to line that up. I just knew I needed to cut that down a little bit extra next to the peak. No fussing or fiddling there. We'll just add our door on this one. And I do use my sanding block to knock off any of the paper hairs. Hopefully, with new magic mats, I won't have as many paper hairs. Yeah, I have had that same cutting mat since the Scout came out, and I want to say that was in 2024. So those are like a year and a half old cutting mats, and I die cut a lot of stuff. We'll see how that magnetic one works out. We have our next turquoise house, and I could have used other colors, but the roofs on the houses for on the images that I saw in Iceland Greenland, not Iceland. I might be going on a trip to Iceland with my aunts in September. So I keep thinking about Iceland, which is actually the greener of the islands. It's much smaller. It's close to Greenland. Anyway, I thought it would be a good way to show a little support for Greenland in its independence. We just, the business lately. I try to keep this not talking about politics. I really do, because a lot of us need a way to escape all of the craziness of this world. But yeah, I support Greenland in its independence. And this is kind of why I was thinking about Greenland. Anyway, let's put these cute little houses together and try to figure out how we're going to use them on a card. I'm going to do another 5x7 card. So we've got 5x7 Matting Basics Set B, largest die. And we're going to take that Shady Leaves 3D embossing folder of the month. And we're going to create a lovely background. Now, I thought about ink blending and then embossing, but I really wanted this to have a lot more variation in color. I didn't want it to be a really deep color. So I'm going to do Pinkalicious. I think this must be Sea Glass. And then I added a lovely purple, which I can't remember off the top of my head now because I showed it and then didn't look at it. So I'll start with the turquoise, and then we'll add the pink. And you can see that the background stays a lighter color, and the embossed areas really pick up the darker amounts of ink. Now I get kind of a funky purple between the Pinkalicious and the Sea Glass. I think this is Lavender Fields, maybe something like that. And we'll add that to the base. It's similar in tone, to the shaded lilac. I really like that. And salvage patina, like we said, those are, like I said earlier, that's two of my favorite colors to blend together. Now we're going to take the essential modern ovals, not the stylish. These are the modern ovals. They're longer and narrower. And we're going to take two of these dies. One we're going to cut out with vellum and one with some of the treasured cardstock from the Antique Assorted pack. We're going to use the pearl metallic version. And then I'm going to run that through the shaded leaves or shady leaves embossing folder again. I told you I'm going to use the heck out of this embossing folder. These leaves are just gorgeous. So now I have extra cardstock on the back of this panel. We'll add that to a 5x7 card base. Just going to glue that right down to our 5x7 card base. I have stopped, well, not stopped. Lately, I haven't been putting a heavyweight block down. Again, the humidity is so low right now. Things dry really fast, and I don't feel the need to put a heavyweight block on things as much in this weather. So we'll layer our embossed oval on the vellum oval with an extra piece of cardstock between, and then of course another piece of cardstock behind the vellum panel. And then I will add the houses. I've added a little bit of extra cardstock behind each of the houses and 2 layers behind the pink because it's going to overlap the other 2 houses just a little more. And I wanted a little bit of extra dimension on that particular house. Oh, before I determine my exact placement, I'm going to try to keep the spacing of the outer 2 houses about the same from the edge of the oval. Then I pulled out some sentiments from the Colorful Bold Spatters and Colorful Splash. These are the Better Press and the Glimmer of the Month from August of 2024. And I have a bunch of these sentiments all foiled and ready to be used on a project. I decided to use the rainbow foiling on black cardstock. I thought that would really pop. And we'll just trim out the sentiments that I want to use. These are actually the Glimmer of the Month sentiments. The Better Press sentiments were the larger sentiments. So I'm going to use the Merry and Bright sentiment strips, and I think the Always and Forever sentiment strips has the same style of die. So there's a bunch of different banner widths, or lengths I should say, on this die. I'm just going to find the one that fits best on my sentiment and use that to die cut it. That's another way to use those multiple sentiments dies to get the size you want. I love that. And it actually is easier to tape down onto a piece of cardstock to get the size you want. And you don't have to cut all of those banners at once. So we adhere that to the front of the card. Then we're going to pull in the Ears to Spring clear stamp and die of the month. And we're going to adhere the sentiment. This is the Sending Springtime Smiles that I didn't heat emboss from my last card. I think it was the last card. And so that's what we're going to use on the inside of the card, and that completes. I think this is card number 9. Holy cow. Yep, this is card number 10. We're going to do another 5x7 card using the 5x7 Matting Basics Set B largest die. I cut some heavyweight white cardstock, and I used my sanding block to knock off any of the paper hairs. And we're pulling in Lively Blossoms, the crate extra this month. So I've got a bunch of the leaves. There are 3 branches of leaves dies in this set. And I cut each of them 2 or 3 times. And we're going to create a background. There's going to be die cuts all over this background. So I've got the 2 longest stems of leaves, and I'm going to do kind of a circular pattern here using my heavyweight block to hold all of those fine fiddly pieces down while I glue up the next piece. So I'm just going to use the leaf branch that kind of leans to the right, and I'm going to use one of each of those. Oh no, this one leans to the left. So I'm going to add that in the other corner. We've got kind of a wreath pattern going on there, but we're going to even this out so it's just all whole bunch of leaves in the background. I'm trying to keep within the margins of the mat, but if it overlaps the edge, we can always trim it off or let it be, because this is slightly smaller than a 5x7 card base, and it would just overlap onto the card base. Just going to keep filling in with all of these pretty little branches. I think there's one, two, three, four. There might be 3 of each of the smaller branches and just 2 of the large branch. Now that I had all of those adhered, I had put stems on all of the flower buds, and I'm just going to take all of those stems off. Now I could use these stems again. As you can see, little circles are peeling off for the most part, so I'm going to hang on to those and put them in my extras of the little bits and bobs. For this month, I put them all in a zipper bag. All of the leftover elements from each month go in a zipper bag for future use. Next, we're going to do a little more of that Yasatomo and Spellbinders watercolor mixing. We've got the pearl and the gold here. I added a little water and let that sit a minute, and then I used my paintbrush to stir that little paint pot up to get a nice slurry of paint, and then tap my watercolor paintbrush that's loaded up with the paint all over the card front to add a nice spatter. I have a really hard time with just plain old white backgrounds. So the spatter makes it for me. We're going to add some spatter to the inside of the card. Again, it's continuity from the front of the card to the inside, and it's easy to write over that spatter. Look at that. Oh, yep, that was the ticket. Brought it from pretty to, oh yeah, this is a Tanya card. It's over the top. That's the kind of card I do, over the top. Now, where is that card? I've got my stack of cards here next to me. And yes, I do like how it turns out. This was definitely one of those cards that was a trust the process. Don't give up on it till you're done. Because it was not really, I was a little worried that it wasn't going to turn out good. Now that I got my placement roughly the way I want it, I'm trying to make sure that none of the colors are too close to each other for repeat. I don't know why I have to be so picky about that, but I do. Let's make sure none of the green on the backer here from the stem I pulled off is going to show. And we're just going to add a little bit of glue behind each of these blooms. I could have put a layer of cardstock behind them, and maybe I should have. That might have made it feel a little bit more like a card that I create, but this one will be a lot easier to mail than some of them. I tend to give my cards away or sell them at work, and someone said they tried to put a card with a wax seal on it through the mail, and it got returned to them. The person that they mailed it to never got it, and it got returned with a message that it didn't fit through the machine. And I had to let her know that you got to use a non-machinable stamp on that one. That it costs a little extra, but they have to hand sort some of these really detailed and unevenly thicknessed cards. I made a cheat for myself when I cut out a 1/4 inch wide slot, and if I can slide it through that, then it's normal postage. If not, I got to add extra ounce packaging or packaging instead of mail. So this is from the Better Press and Foil of the month, this sentiment. It is wishing you a day in full bloom, which goes perfectly with all of these flowers. And I had just one more flower head left, and we'll add that to the inside of the card. This is a great birthday or any other kind of card. And that was card number 10. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun playing with all of these spring themed products. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't done that. Leave me a comment. I always love to hear what you have to say. Check that description box below for a link to the picture list of all of the products that I used today. Until next time, here are a couple more videos I thought you might enjoy. Bye-bye.